Hello, everyone. Megan Boitano. Welcome to today's RD2RD Live Show. As you know, we're talking about working with brands as an RDN. And I'm excited to bring this topic to our community today because it feels a little elusive. If you followed my Instagram story earlier today, I feel like this topic, someone will bring up, I work with brands, and I think there is kind of a misconception of what does that mean? What are the opportunities as a dietitian? How do I know if it could be a good fit for me? What does it actually look like? What does that mean? I'm working with a brand. So my goal today is Jenna Gorham and I are going to kind of break down from her experience. She works with brands and talk about what it is and how to get started from the experience of someone who's been doing this successfully. So, Jenna, thank you for coming on and sharing with the RD2RD community about this topic.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. And for everyone who's joining us, be sure this is about you, right? You came on to listen to this live to get your questions answered. So as we go along, I'm going to keep an eye on the questions. So if you have a burning, comment or something that you'd like Jenna to answer, feel free to drop that in. Or as we're talking, we'll be happy to loop back around on questions. So definitely keep those comments coming. And for those of you, tell us if you're currently working with brands or what your biggest question or concern is, and we'll look at those as well. So Jenna, tell us about yourself, your career journey as a dietitian, and kind of as an entrepreneur. How did you end up here in brand work?
Yeah. So I just became a dietitian in the spring of 2016. And then from there, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I took a clinical job. And I live in Montana, so there aren't a ton of dietitian jobs out here. So at the time, this is the job I could find, and it was a clinical per diem position at a hospital that happened to be 2.5 hours away from where I live. So it was great for a while. It was full time for the first 6 months or so. And then after that, the other dietitians started coming back from maternity leaves and summer vacation. So my hours were getting cut way down. But it was also at the time where I started to realize, well, this isn't really the direction I want to go with my career. It felt limiting in a way. So I decided I would leave and I would just start a private practice. I thought that's what
entrepreneurial dietitians do. It's clinical or private practice, and that's it, right?
Right. I thought that was my option. So I just started, and I think it took me a while to figure out my niche and what I wanted to do. And then maybe 6 months to a year in, I realized, well, really, I always wanted to work with companies. I always wanted to do communications. I never really saw myself doing counseling. So that's
Do you have a background in communications? Like, did you take specific classes? How did you know you wanted to do communications?
I guess I always liked writing, or I like editing more than writing, actually, but that's just always what I like to do. Even in undergrad, I kind of saw myself working in nutrition communications. I just didn't really know what that meant.
And I think that's the topic of when you say working in communications and you like writing, I'd love to dive more into, like, what does that mean? What does working in nutrition communications mean?
It could be like the influencer perspective, or it could be writing, and it could be media, or whatever it may be. It could be nutrition messaging for brands. I think there's a lot of different things. So when I first became a dietitian, I spent a lot of time reaching out to dietitians who worked in communications that I thought had really cool jobs, and I wanted to learn more about what they did. So I scheduled calls with them to learn more about what they do and kind of what my options were. And it took me a while to figure out my niche and what I like to do and what I'm good at before I really narrowed in on my offerings.
Okay.
So I definitely pitched things early on that weren't a good fit for me, but I learned along the way.
I think that's always part of the journey, right? Never going to get
Definitely.
it right. So we'll kind of start from the beginning. You started to talk about how you got started working with brands. So it sounds like you were starting to say you did a little bit of research, right? You talked to people who were already doing, working with brands, but then kind of where do you start? Like, what comes first?
So for me, I went to Fancy, and I guess before that, started pitching brands via email, just general pitches, like I can write recipes and I can write blog posts and whatever it may be, what I thought they wanted. And then it was at Fancy where I connected with a brand, and I ended up chatting with them afterwards and fell into a few different roles working with them. So that was really key for me, and it has been really good for me to go to different expos like Fancy or Expo West to meet brands and meet the people behind the company to figure out what they want and what they need. So yeah, I guess like you were saying, I did connect with other dietitians to figure out what they were doing, but also none of it really felt true to me still. A lot of them were doing like videos and Facebook Lives and Instagram, and that just didn't connect with me. I didn't really want to be the face of the company or do all that content creation really. I wanted to be more of the behind the scenes voice. So I kind of fell into it, and then I started doing more offerings based on what I liked doing for them. And from there I was able to grow. And
so talk to me a little bit about what more of a behind the scenes offering might look like, because I think I have this perception of working with brands means you have to be out in front or, you know, being that face. You're the dietitian face. What does that mean?
So there's a lot of different things you can do behind the scenes. I think the more obvious route is to do that influencer type role, which there's definitely a need for that too. For me, I connect brands with dietitians, and that's what I like to do because I like that behind the scenes organization and structure, I guess, in the planning. Other people, they sit on boards behind companies, so you could give them insight or offer a retainer model to just give them insight on their product development or their nutrition messaging, or you could develop content for them, or it all kind of falls into that marketing role, but it's more providing your expertise to their products and their company.
Would you say that your nutrition background is important, or what kind of core skills, because you mentioned communications and you've talked about connecting with brands at, you know, Fancy or different expos. What do you feel like is really important from a skill set area for being successful?
I think, and when you asked me this question before, I was kind of thinking more personality traits and different things that have helped me to get through certain challenges. And I think patience is big, because a lot of times, and also persistence and resilience, because you will pitch a ton of brands and a lot of them won't get back to you, or a lot will say no. So I think it's being able to handle that and learn from it and move on, and kind of fine tune your pitch and your offerings.
Yeah. What tips do you have for getting your pitch? We can cover up that next, working on your pitch. Email.
Yeah, I think really just being true to you and customizing it to the company and how it could benefit them, and making sure you're pitching brands that you align with too, because you want to like working with them, and if it's good, you just want it to be a good fit on both ends, really. So I think, share your media kit or whatever it may be. Share a few specific ideas and offerings. Ask to hop on a call, and make sure you customize it a bit to them, what you like about their products, and how you see it benefiting them.
Okay, that's actually a really valuable tip there, is kind of you talk about the kind of an anatomy of a pitch, and also maybe the process for what that might, look like as you're approaching, a brand. I want to do work for you isn't really the angle that's probably going to get you where you want to be, right?
Right.
So
and when I started, I felt like the option was to create recipes or post to my Instagram. So I started with my pitches, I started just listing out my different services. Well, I could do this, 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 or this, but that wasn't customized to them. And they have a million influencers they work with, and I wasn't really an influencer. So I think it's really honing in on what are they looking for? How can your specific skill set benefit them? Do you reach the audience they want to connect with? Do you reach so many people in a certain market, or whatever it may be? Just kind of share a little bit about how you can really benefit them.
Got it. That's, I think you mentioned about, as far as the skills and things you need to be persistent, right, of getting told no, but I think you've taken those and improved the way that you pitch. But I think the really important point here of what do they need and making it customized. How do you go about, you say hop on a call. How do you go about getting personalized or custom? What's your approach since you've been doing this for quite a while now?
To become familiar with the brand?
Well, yeah, like when you say, okay, I have a generic pitch and I want to move to being a little bit more custom, more specific to their needs. Yeah. What are the kind of things that you start looking at, thinking of? What's that process like for you?
I just try to gather information about them. So it's looking a lot at their website and their social media. So those are the main ways I see them. Or I try their products and I take a look at what they have, who they already work with, maybe what they don't have and what they need and how my services could benefit them.
Do you maybe identify like a gap for them and in the pitch and say, hey?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, and see if there's a need or see if they're already doing something that's similar to what I do. And yeah, go from there.
Okay. That's helpful, I think. We'll see. I should check to see if anyone has more specific questions about how to do a pitch. Definitely drop those in there so that we make sure that we're getting into the meat of maybe where you're struggling or what you haven't had success with, because maybe Tim can offer.
And I also see a lot of pitches from other dietitians as they share their media kits or their ideas. So I kind of get a feel from the brand perspective too, from what I like to see from what someone shares with me.
What would you say are the biggest kind of, I don't want to say no-nos, or things where people could immediately have a big impact with their pitch that you're like, oh, if you just did this differently?
I guess I got one just yesterday that was pretty vague. That was I just started this YouTube channel and I connected this type of audience and it may be a good fit for some of the brands you work with. But it was still low followings and nothing specific about how it could really help the brand or nothing. I also think it's good when people say, I'd love to schedule a time to talk, or are you available next week for a call? Because I think it's more direct and it gets to the point, and that's just how I communicate. So I like that.
And it shows an interest in learning specifically, right? It shows that interest. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned a media kit. For those people who maybe this is a new topic for them, they're like here exploring the idea. Kind of what is a media kit and maybe what are some key elements to, just briefly, to have them?
What I look for in the media kit is the numbers, really, your number of engaged followers or your page views or whatever it is. If you're trying to highlight your blog, your Instagram, whatever it is, showing numbers that highlight that. Also the audience you reach. For me, I don't do a media kit because I don't do that type of work, but I have a capabilities deck. So if that's something that more fits your niche, then that's another option.
When
so
you
I
say
list
a
out more details.
Capabilities deck, that's skill-based?
Yeah, it's also my offerings, but it's more broken down. It's just more details than I can share in an email. So I have my general overview of my different offerings.
Maybe you could give us an example of maybe one of your offerings of what that might look like for you if you want to.
Yeah, so I do like dietitian ambassador program development. And so that's like one of the big bullets. And then under that, I have different bullets of what that may entail.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And then when they seem interested, you could send that over for them to take a look at. Versus, since you're not really coming from that angle of influencer, how would you say, I guess I'm curious, like the opportunities in influencer, what do you see as a difference as far as what are the priorities you should be doing if you're looking at, you really want to use it from an influencer angle versus kind of like capabilities focused offerings? Like, this seems very different to me.
They are, but I think it's different offerings you have. And I'm sure you could combine them together if you have, if you do all of that. But I also think that's where honing in on your niche really helps. Because it's hard to do it all. And it did take me a while to hone in on my niche. So I'm sure at one point I included my Instagram following. But doesn't fit me anymore, and I don't want to offer that. So,
and things like writing, do you do specific, writing works? I know some people do like even freelance writing or creating some kind of a program launch back in from a nutrition. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, for me, I only do long-term monthly retainer contracts. So if someone wants writing, then I do that, and I'll do like a few blog posts a month or whatever it may be. But that's not something I'll pitch directly, just because I think some people can see that as like, oh, she'll write a blog post here and there. But rather, I prefer to do more. I really prefer to do the dietitian outreach because I like being an advocate for the dietitian side and also sharing these products that I love with the dietitian community.
Got it.
So that's just prefer to do. So I try to connect with brands who I think that could benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And then if something you really want is the writing, then that's just an add-on, and that's fine. I like doing that too.
Okay. Really? Okay. That's interesting. So what are any additional, like some pitfalls that you see that dietitians kind of get into when they're starting, or on pricing? You mentioned doing more of longer term, type contracts. What are some of the pitfalls for dietitians?
I think it depends on what stage you're at and kind of your experience with working in brands. I think when you're first starting out, it is that pitch and finding your niche and figuring out how to approach brands. I think a lot of people, I hear people say that they don't know how to contact the brands or how to get started.
I was going to say, like, you go to Fancy, how do you really maximize your time at a conference? Like, what does it look like to like connect with a brand?
Yeah, and the big thing that I've learned is to, at least for Expo West, I thought it was really helpful because they list all the brands that are going and they have contact information. So I contact them ahead of time, and a lot of times they'll want to set up a meeting with you. So I think that really helps. You can get that face-to-face interaction, and sometimes they won't have time to connect with you at the booth because it is a little hectic. But then you at least have your contact information. If they're interested, they'll follow up or you follow up with them. So I think that's been really key for me in my first connection.
And would you say to just really keep, pitching? Like, don't be afraid to just, it's going to get better the more you do it. So don't like hold back, or to kind of practice.
Don't do it blindly. I think have a little strategy behind it. Yeah. But I think the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Okay. I like the idea of kind of, as you kind of where you are now. And I always think it's interesting when we talk to people or we see them, we always have this perception like they popped up as their current self. Like, hey, I connect dietitians with brands. And then we walk back and we're like, well, I did this, and then I did that, and then I was writing. Yeah. Nobody gets to where they are. So I feel like there's so much of this focus on helping people launch into their like fully formed pop-up self, and I'm like, no, not gonna happen. You got to start over here. There is no going from here to here except by going from here to here, right?
Exactly. No, there's a lot of steps along the way. Definitely.
You're not gonna pop up into a fully bloomed flower overnight, right?
No, it takes time, definitely, to figure out what you want to offer and just to get better at it, and also being okay if they say no, and if it's not a good fit for now, like there's more brands out there that are a better fit.
Yeah, I like that. Well, it's good to know that you connect dietitians with brands, because I think, for people who are, interested in working with brands, it's certainly someone to put on their contact list, so that you might be an opportunity for people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're looking kind of from start to finish, maybe if you're going from reaching out to a brand, kind of walk us through some of the big bucket things that happen. So maybe we could use an example of an email pitch or Expo West or Fancy, like kind of walk us through this happens, and then about this much time passes and I reach out and then they send me back a contract, or talk us through what that looks like so it doesn't feel so elusive.
Yeah. So there's that initial contact, and whether I'm sending a pitch through the general contact form and hoping it gets to the right person or they'll connect me with someone, or I somehow have that contact from, I don't know, whatever it may be, probably Expo West or LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, but Fancy, LinkedIn too sometimes. So it's that initial pitch, and with that, I'll send how I think I can help them, and I'll send my capabilities deck, which gives them that more detailed overview if there's something else that catches their eye. Then from there, I'll say I'd love to schedule time to talk, and hopefully they'd like to set up a call with me. So then after that, it's the call. And then that's why I really explain what I do and how I can help them.
If you don't hear back, what's your follow-up protocol?
I follow up. I used to have more time for these pitches, but so now I'm a little less structured with it, I guess. But I follow up. If I don't hear after the first pitch, I'll follow up in 2 weeks or a month. And then if they have expressed interest and I haven't followed up, or if I've submitted a proposal and I haven't heard back, I'll follow up the next week. I don't want to be too pushy.
Right, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to give them time to think about it. And I know it takes time on their end to talk with their team, or maybe they don't control the budget or whatever it is. I know there's a lot that goes on their end too.
How do you navigate when you get the feeling like they're possibly interested, but how do you, I don't know, like the selling part, of yourself to kind of help to push them forward? Because that's...
I guess I never think of it as selling when I'm on the phone, because I just share what I offer. And I think it comes through in my excitement about it. I think that they see the benefit and they see, I don't know, what it would be like to work with me. So I think they can tell if it's a good fit or not a good fit just by talking to me. And I don't necessarily try to convince them one way or another. But I always ask what they're looking for, or how are they looking to connect with dietitians, because then I can kind of customize what I'm saying and what I offer to what would most benefit them.
Got it.
And usually it's similar things that I do, but it's
they're all things personalize it.
Making these things up that would help them. But yeah, I listen to what they have to say too and how I can really help them.
Nice. Okay, so we talked about you got on the phone with them. Yep. Now what happens? And maybe they say yes. Then what?
Yeah. So from there, hopefully they want a proposal. So then I will write a proposal and then send that within the next few days.
Okay. How did you get good at writing proposals? This is very, did you get a template? How did you do this?
No, I had no template. It was just practice.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of practice really and figure out what works best, and kind of the pricing model too. I had a hard time figuring out, do I want to do like a flat monthly fee, or this campaign is this price?
And how do you be detailed enough so that, you don't end up scope creep and,
Exactly. Yeah, because I don't want to do all the work ahead of time just for the proposal for them to say no, potentially.
Because there's a lot of time invested in a proposal.
Right. So I write out details of what this could entail, and then I now do just an hourly rate, and then I'll require a monthly minimum of hours, because I think that allows us the flexibility, and it allows me to budget my time too. So I know, okay, I need to budget a certain amount of hours for this client per month, and it helps me budget.
Do you say most clients are okay with that hourly, or are they more project based? What would you say your experience is?
I think it depends. I think I've seen both. I have clients who prefer to know how much it's going to cost them up front, but I think also by having that monthly retainer and my hourly rate, they can tell how much roughly it's going to cost them. And then I'm upfront about it too. For example, if you want me to help you with an event for Fancy, it's going to that's a lot more hours on my end. So prices may increase around then, or there's just gonna be more cost. Mm-hmm. And I also think people are okay with that. I think giving them the hourly rate plus the minimum monthly retainer, it gives them an overview of what it's gonna cost. And then for anything over that, it's going to cost more, so they can still budget for it.
Okay.
I think they're okay with that.
So that's a really interesting example of planning an event at Fancy for, a brand for dietitians, that they have to have those things have to happen. So they're looking for people to make them happen, right?
Yeah.
So you submit your proposal, and then
and then this is where the waiting happens sometimes. So it's not always right away that you hear back. So sometimes I'll hear back within a week. Usually I follow up after a week just to check in. And then hopefully I'll hear back from that, and they'll say, I just need more time to pitch it to my boss, or whatever it may be. And sometimes it does take months for it to go through, or sometimes even before you submit the proposal. Sometimes after the initial phone calls, I really like this idea, but I need to talk to my team, or whatever it may be. So it's kind of that, that courting phase where you're still you're still staying on their radar, and you check in every
And this is a question from a listener. Are you following up via email or phone for the most part?
I follow up via email. Okay. Unless I did have one client who was really, really bad with email, and there's a few times where I needed to hear from him, so I did call, but I follow up with email.
Okay. And then
from there too, they usually give you a guideline too of this is what I'm waiting on, and you can also plan to reach back out in however many months or reach back out midsummer, and they're good about giving you a time frame.
Okay, and then you just do that. And then I think there was a question about, any kind of a range or idea for like hourly rate. What's kind of customary, I guess, for working with brands? Is there a normal range or just it's highly variable?
Yeah, so I was actually just talking to another dietitian about this maybe a couple months ago now, and she did a lot of research. It's Sarah Marjoram, I think.
Oh, yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she looked a lot into this, so she's a good resource for this. And she was telling me that the average hourly rate for this type of consulting work is $200 to $250 an hour.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm not at that because I started working with brands, I guess, a year and a half ago, but I'm still gradually increasing that just because as I'm learning more and I don't know, I provide more value as
you're more experienced.
Yeah.
Just like with any job. All right, that's really helpful. So how do you, you get started with the job and then you're interacting with them. I'm also really curious if you use some kind of a technology platform. I know some people will use various tools that help, freelancers or other people stay in contact, CRMs. Like, what are you using? Do you have a tool, or how do you keep track of all this stuff?
I really just use Google Sheets.
Okay.
I've tried other tools. Like I tried Dubsado, but it didn't seem like a good fit for the time. Yeah, so maybe at some point that could be a better fit. But I think just the way my business is, I really only have the capacity to work with a handful of brands at a time. So I don't know if I need something like that. So yeah, primarily Google Sheets just to keep track of all my dietitians and our events and things that are going on.
I think it's important for people. Sometimes we think like the technology is what we have to have in order to make something happen. And I'm always curious because a lot of times people are like, no.
Exactly. No, and I feel that way too. And I think you see other people using these tools like Asana or Trello, and you think you need that for organization, or even how we were talking before, people structure out their days like this day is for clients, this day is for content, and how we were saying that doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
So it's just finding what works best for you.
I always laugh because, when you're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, you always see ads for all of these programs and software, and you just rarely see an ad for like a piece of scratch paper on my desk. Like,
right.
Like, where's the ad for that? Because it's not getting any money behind that one.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I write down everything.
Like the good old spreadsheet, Google Sheets.
Exactly.
I'm using Google Sheets for my beta jumpstart program. Like, have I sent the email? Have I heard back? When is the next thing scheduled? Like, a worksheet's it's old school, but it does work.
Exactly.
It's color coded. Like when you put yes, it changes color. There's all kinds of fun things one can do with this.
And you can make it look like whatever you want. You can it just fits your needs.
Exactly. Yeah. So at least we're on the same page there. Nothing against people who like their technology. I know I use
That's okay too.
Yes, on the client end, I use Dubsado, or however you say that word, Dubsado, as someone who was working with someone, and it was a really slick system. So I have to say I thought it was great. But
yeah, I have heard great things about it.
Yeah, so nothing I would say. Well, we digress. So we were kind of off in the process of working with the brand, and I think till you book them, you get them, are you giving them regular, updates? You're doing it hourly. How do you continue to get additional work, or you're on a monthly retainer, maybe early on when you weren't there? How did that process work?
The process of getting new clients?
Well, like you have a client, you're working together and you're on a monthly retainer now, but do they, initially maybe you were doing project work, but how do you continue to have them on board and sign on again or get additional work, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And sometimes the contract will run up after a certain period, and you kind of get the sense for that based on budget. But also, if you had a good experience with them, they come back down the road when the time is right. Because I do have clients who are they're doing a certain campaign or a big push in a certain market. So it's good timing for them at different points in whatever stages they're at. So they keep me in mind when they have a need. I guess my other clients have been just long-term, and I guess at the end of our contract, I'll rewrite it and almost assume that they'll stay on because things are going well.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think what advice I have for that to try to continue. And I think the best you can do is just let them know that their contract is coming up and do you want to continue? And maybe again, the value you can bring for the future. But at that point, they should know your value.
Right. That's right. So we kind of talked a little bit about some of the services that you offer in your skill deck. I'd be curious to any of some of your favorite projects that you've done. I don't know if you can share specific brands or details, but things that like you're super proud of that were really interesting for you. I think it would be fun to hear about. Sorry, this one's off on.
Yeah.
Didn't warn you about this question.
That's okay. I guess I like all the projects that I do because they're so different. I really like doing dietitian outreach to different key markets. So whether they're in certain cities that I want to connect with and share product with and just share how great this product is, or I really like doing different sponsorship too. So I like seeing all the cool things that dietitians are doing. So whether they have a podcast or they have an online course that they may want to sponsor for, I like learning about all that because then I can go back to the brand and really advocate for this dietitian too. So I like kind of being that between person, middleman to promote the dietitian, but also share this product that I love.
You're like the matchmaker. You're a matchmaker for.
Yeah. And it's fun. Something else I did that was a little bit different for me was nutrition messaging for a client to figure out kind of what are the key nutrition selling points that really, that align with their audience. So it was really different for me because I hadn't done something like that before, but it was really, really interesting and challenging. So it was a lot of fun just to do something a little different.
Nice. And I think that some of what you've brought up is when you say, well, what can you do to work, with a brand, that there's really a ton of opportunities in really researching those brands, maybe going to Fancy or Expo West or some of those and maybe trying to have those conversations and reaching out to other dietitians who perhaps what you see them do resonates with you, right? To kind of find out how to get your foot in the door.
What you're looking for too. Yeah, because a lot of people, I think it's important to kind of zone in on your niche and keep doing what you're good at. And if you have, even as I mentioned, that brands will sponsor different events, or if you're giving a talk or a presentation and you need a sponsor for that, I think that's also a good opportunity to connect with brands and have them sponsor that, whether they're sharing product or paying you to do it or sharing their logos, whatever it is.
Yeah. What kind of brands, buckets of, work with dietitians? I always think of mostly like food brands and health food type products, right?
Right.
Is kind of would you say, I was thinking of like people who are developing apps or technology or other types of tools, come to mind for you. For
True. I would think of really anyone who wants to connect with that, whatever audience you're reaching. So for me, I work with startup companies who have a health focus and want to connect with dietitians. But I think a lot of dietitians, you can still have your nutrition focus, whether you focus on diabetes or plant-based nutrition. There's companies that align with those values and they want to reach your audience through whatever platforms you have. So whether you do have a podcast or a blog or a social media account, or you're hosting events in your local community, I think you can find a way to get a brand involved. And I think sometimes it's good to offer something for free. So if you're doing a free community event, have them share product at it, and then you have a contact there too for if you have something to offer down the road.
That's a good point. Another question, you were mentioning Media Kit, and there is a lot of influencer type brand work. What are some of the kind of numbers and general, where do you need to be because you hear all these conflicting things about the number versus engagement, where you're like, well, I don't have a big enough following yet. What is that? And it depends probably on the price, maybe the brand, the niche, like it depends.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it totally depends. It depends on the company and kind of in their goals. So I know there's different campaigns we do that we really want to focus on micro influencers. And sometimes those aren't always paid opportunities. It depends. But if they're not paid, it's still a good way to connect with the brand and get your foot in the door. And then there's some things where like kind of middle of the road, like 15,000, but then there's upwards of like 50 or 100,000 followers. And I think it all depends on what the brand is looking to do, because not only do they look at the followers, but they look at the engagement. So if you have a high following, but you're only getting like 100 likes per picture, then it's kind of hard to, I don't know, show the benefit there.
Right.
So you have to, I guess, show your value.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think the point about, I think there's always that people are object to doing anything for free. As a dietitian, you can get in some groups where there's this giant uproar about, you know, valuing ourselves. And I think that we're learning from that experience. I can't remember, Brown was on talking about, like she does working with athletes, and she now has successful boot camps she does for different teams, but she started by doing some free ones, right? And now she charges per head, and she's very successful. That sometimes, you know, that offering your services does reap rewards, that there was an intrinsic value for you, whether or not it was truly financial. That's for you to decide, not for someone else to judge you about what you're doing.
Well, I think it makes you look good too, because they appreciate that free exposure you offer. Because I know a lot of influencers who do have large followings, and I'll send them a product sample, and they'll post, whether they post a full photo or just in their story. It keeps them on my radar because they did that, and that was really nice of them, and they didn't have to, but they're still on my radar for when we are ready to pursue influencer partnerships.
Got it. Well, that's an interesting idea. So I think some of my mental thoughts of, you know, if you're looking for micro influencers and that whole idea of niching down, like you mentioned, it took you a while to find your niche or your niche or however you want to say it, that really starting to think about what that might be, because there's probably a subset of, you know, brands and their specific needs that you could start to cultivate, right? Of what types of products are in this realm, and really starting to focus on, like you mentioned, even writing some of those key marketing statements. You know, you're resonating with their audience, so you're going to have a better idea. So a lot of that's kind of tying together as we're, you know, talking here. I can see a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, it did take me a while to find my niche, and I think just doing it helped me do that, even when I was in private practice, just by seeing different clients and figuring out who I like to work with and who I needed to work with.
Oh yeah. Don't even ask me about my first year. That's what I said. Like, don't ask me about my first year. It was like, I don't even know. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, because it's part of the process. That's why you do it.
No, it's all part of the learning process, definitely.
Because everybody does it.
Exactly. No, I spent a lot of time learning, and I think that the first 6 months of my private practice, I spent it like watching webinars and listening to podcasts.
And that's my next question, like resources. So I feel like I can go and listen to, if it's like email marketing. I mean, I know my Amy Porterfield and my Neil Patel and my, you know, Pat Flynn. I know who to go to for some of like the online and digital marketing stuff. And I'm like, where does one go? Like Nutrition Entrepreneurs is a DPG, like Dietitians and Nutrition and Communications from Fancy, or there's some like little cultish groups that you can join. Where does one connect with other people who could be helpful in this realm?
And that's something that I need to work on. I'm not even in any DPGs right now, and I'm trying to figure out which ones I want to join this year. I was in Nutrition Entrepreneurs early on when I first started my private practice, and I could not figure out their email system and how to make it come to my inbox. I sent out hundreds of emails a day, and I could not stand that, so I didn't renew. And I've heard it's since changed, so I am reconsidering. So that one, I've also heard good things about food and culinary professionals for connecting with brands.
Oh, good idea.
Another one I'm considering. And then also dietitians in business and communications. So again, I'm not a part of any of them, but I've heard good things. But I think there's other resources out there too. I listen to a lot of business podcasts. Or used to more.
What ones were your favorite?
I I mean, I always like how I built this just because
Oh, I
it's
love that.
inspiring.
Yeah.
But lately I like Biz Chicks, some of their content.
Okay.
So I think they have more practical tips for each stage of your business and practical tips for growing and getting into the next stage.
Yeah. Are there any good resources as far as getting better skills at pitching and your media kit, like good templates or ideas? Like, where could one go for that kind of stuff? Proposal stuff.
Yeah, I just kind of winged it.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm surprised. Are there no resources on RD2RD for that? I think that would be a good thing.
No, but maybe someone should put some hint. Oh no. No, like maybe a little tip sheet on what not to do or what to do. No, I'm thinking like some of those things are the simple, but they're really hard when you don't have them and you're kind of winging it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And now I do have my saved template that I have as a canned response in Gmail, but then I customize each little bit per brand.
Right.
But there's other good resources. I think particularly if you're looking to do more of the influencer route, I think there's good options like Katie Proctor's MBA course is really geared towards influencers and working with brands. I think that's a great option.
Forgot about Katie Proctor.
And
I didn't forget about her, but
yeah,
her MBA. I forgot about the MBA that she has. That
Abby Sharp has a few great resources, particularly on pricing, but more so for the media and influencer type of work.
Right.
And
do you find there's value in dietitians that work to become like a media spokesperson for the academy? There's any value in that? Because I know there's something.
I think it gives you experience talking in the media, but I think you also can't work with brands while you do that.
Okay, good point.
I believe, So I think it gives you experience. It's great experience. And it's a 2-year commitment, I believe. I don't know much about it, but
Interesting.
I have heard that they can't work with brands just from a few of them that are. So I don't particularly connect with them.
I feel like, no, that's kind of alienates you. So note to self.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Like Biz Checks, it's Katie Proctor's like kind of MBA thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Abby Sharp. Any other resources that besides websites or things that you can think of? Otherwise, we'll look for any more questions.
I guess just connecting with people who do it. I think a lot of dietitians are willing to talk to you and answer your questions. So reaching out to people who you think they do something that you would like to do. I think people are more than happy to share what they do and help you and give their advice.
I think we oftentimes in this age of technology and don't think people are, I don't know, less generous of their knowledge and time. And there's so many people, even in my own little world here, that have said yes to my questions, and I think, why would you take the time to answer my questions? Because people are just inherently good and want to be helpful, so they might say yes. Worst case, they totally ignore you, but they might say yes. So
exactly, but most cases they'll say yes.
Yeah. And you can pick their brain, which is really nice. So I have one more question here from Stacy, which I'm not. We can go back to, but we were talking about free product from a brand before. We're touching on that, and she said, if a brand gave you free product, would they eventually pay you, or is it better to get money from the beginning? So I guess we were talking about kind of two different situations. So maybe we can clarify that a little bit. Like where you just they just sent you some free product. I'm not really sure if we know what your question is.
It depends on what you're offering, I guess. I think, and how the whole situation plays out. So I guess a lot of times I'll share product just to get people to know about this product. And I say, I'm happy to look at your media kit. So I think you can always, when you're connecting with them, just share your media kit and show what you offer. I mean, there's always an opportunity for it, but just be prepared with what you can offer them.
Okay. Yeah, whether or not you should be trying to get money from the beginning. And I'm wondering if our comment is, you accept the free product and post about their product, and then should you be trying at the beginning to make it a paid opportunity? I think that's the question.
To say something Okay, I get it. Because I've heard other dietitians say things like, no, I'm sorry, I only do like paid work or something at this time. But I guess it depends on what they're looking for. I wouldn't do that if a brand was reaching out and saying, hey, we'd love to send you this product in exchange for a post. I never do that to people because then you're not getting an authentic post from the brand side. But also it doesn't build a good relationship with those people. So for those, I would for sure turn down and say, no, I only do paid work. But if someone just wants to share their product just to build a relationship with you, that's really what they're doing, is they want to get to know you and what you can do. So I think it's okay to try their product. And if you want to, you don't have to. If you want to share it in your story, even something simple, it doesn't have to be a full post. I think that's up to you. Just
Yeah. And
I
it
think it's
might
more like
could be helpful to, like I always see people do ad posts, and some people are super creative, and there's a skill set, right, to write a decent post, to figure out how to get some engagement. So there's an opportunity to practice too,
exactly
how to do that. It's not like
Yeah.
when you get your first like pay, if you get a paid one, you're like, right, I've never done this before.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it. Yeah, you don't have to do it all the time. But if there's a few brands that maybe you really want to work with, then I think it's a good way to show them what you can do and build that relationship with them. Because it does take time, like we were talking before, it takes time to build that relationship. I mean, I've had clients who I've been talking to for months, if not maybe even a full year, who are like, yeah, we love this idea and yada, 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 whatever. It's just not the right timing. And so it does take time to build that relationship. So it's a good way to
kind
start.
of stay on their radar too. Well, this is really helpful. So I'm going to be cognizant of your time and my time and people who are on, if there's any other last minute questions, but making sure that people that maybe want to connect with you, how can people learn more about what you're doing, or find you, make connection?
Yeah, I guess you can visit my website, JennaGorhamRD.com.
Which is in the notes for the post, so you can click right there.
Yep. And I'm not super active on social media anymore, but I'm trying to be more engaged on LinkedIn and Twitter. So you can follow me there. I think I'm Jenna Gorham RD, probably.
We should have talked about LinkedIn. You think LinkedIn, if you're working with brands, you should be focusing on?
It again depends on what you want to do with them. So
okay.
I think if you want to do the influencer route, I think they really look at Instagram. So I think really focusing on Instagram, and you can always direct message them there. So I think that's a great way to connect with them. I don't post my Instagram account anymore, but I keep it because that's how I find out about new brands, and I do contact brands through it too. Okay. So I think Instagram's a good way to connect with them too.
I also have to say, I think I've set a record number of interruptions during this interview. For anyone who's on, you can give a thumbs up to be like, Megan, because this topic, every time I'm like, wait a minute, I have another question. But you'd be like, seriously, Megan, let Jenna finish her sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I am so rude.
Yeah, and if anyone else has any more questions, I'm happy to connect with people via email. They can email, you can include my email in the notes or whatever. Yeah, I'm happy to connect with people.
This topic is very elusive to me. I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff means. It sounds cool. But the whole proposal and pitching and following up, and then, how do I meet these people and how do I price myself? It's all very confusing to me.
No, I felt the same way when I was just starting, so.
Yeah, and like they say no, and then you're like focusing down, and then you're mentioning like super awesome this abilities deck. I think it's a really cool term versus your media kit, and maybe focusing on one over the other. That's really, really cool. Okay, any other? So you're on Twitter, LinkedIn. You're on. Don't really post to Instagram, but people. But
I'm there. People can follow me on whatever social media they want to connect with me on. I'm on all of them.
And a little shout out, like your store, if you have any working with brands, resources, checklists, little guides, something you could kick in there someday.
Oh, for the RD2RD store? Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sure then people who have questions could just go and help themselves too.
Absolutely. I should work on something for that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
When you get questions, at least you could efficiently help them.
Exactly. No, that's a great idea because I am getting more and more questions. So
yeah, I was like, does Jenna do coaching for dietitians that want to work with brands? Are you going to do such a thing?
I don't know. Not at this point. No, I really want just more brand clients, and I don't know, happy doing this. So maybe at some point. I mean, I'm happy to talk with people and email them for now, and who knows? Maybe down the road.
Yeah, I heard you say like an ambassador program. I was like, that might be something I need Jenna's help with. Someday,
Oh, yeah.
put that on my goals list, right? I'm like, oh, good to know.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on the live show. And
Yeah, thank you.
I've had a blast. This has been very informative for me, kind of this behind the scenes look at the type of work you do working with brands and what that means. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Jenna, thank you for your generosity with your
Thank you,
expertise today. And
Yes, I hope it was helpful.
yeah, it was. We're probably going to take a little intermission. I'm super close to having the new website launched. I'm really excited about bringing it on board, but I gotta like hibernate in a cave and get all of it ready to go. So probably be back in July. So we won't have anything until July for the live show here. So yay.
Great.
So we'll see everybody
Great. Well,
back in
thanks,
July.
Megan.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right.